Starting to the bottom right of the map, we have now the LGIM Terran player. It is
LGIM YoDa.
That song that starts at the beginning of each map that's killing me.
It's gonna just keep going and going and going.
Hey robots. Top left we have YoDa's opponent. Starting for SKT1 of course.
SK Telecom T1 Fantasy.
Believed by some people to actually be a robot created to compete with Flash, made by SK.
Well, that's something that he definitely has to prove.
Yep.
So, talking a little bit about the two players and how they ended up in this situation. We had YoDa advancing out of the Code S group, the round of 32. He was in one group with Flying, DRG and MC. Didn't drop a single map, took down DRG with a 2-0, which is, to be fair, not quite the accomplishment that was in the past. We've seen this yesterday. Dong Ragun not doing well in his group at all. He had the up and downs.
Yeah, only winning with an all-in.
Then YoDa with a 2-0 against Flying, so he took the first place in his group, but then in the round of 16 he was not all that lucky. He was in a group with Soulkey, Roro and Flying, and he lost every single match that he played. He lost to Soulkey without taking a map, and then later on he also lost to Roro. Dropped down to Code A, had only to play the third round of Code A of course, where he faced Zerg player, he faced Hiva, who before that took out Terminator and First, and YoDa also not able to take a map here, so Zerg seemed to be a little bit the bane of his existence, therefore he finds himself today in the up and downs.
Yeah. And we'll see how he can do here. I'm expecting big things from both these players. One of them is going to get an edge off of this map, obviously, but I think both these two players should have a decent score coming out of this group. Nice micro here on the Marine. Tries to kill that SCV, but he denies the scout.
You know, you're certainly right. Both of them really are two of the favorites here to get out of the group today. And Fantasy, he was also in Code S. He dropped out of the round of 32 already, so he didn't make it into the second group stage. Therefore, he dropped down to the Challenger League, then to Code A, and had to participate in the first round. In the first round, he took out Solar, advanced to meet Avenge in round 2. And Avenge, he just played such a great series of games in Code A. Took out Fantasy here with a 2-1. Fantasy now as well in the up and downs. And he was in the up and downs in the past, so this is familiar turf for him.
Yeah, definitely. Those are the players doing identical builds so far, by the way. Just, well, actually the variation just started. Well, no, never mind. I thought Fantasy might go into a factory first instead, but he goes into a just slightly delayed reactor. But those players just doing a reactor expand and going into the factory afterwards. We could see mech with this type of opening, but I think it's much more likely we're going to see both players go Marine Tank because of the way this map works. It's just there's too many openings, there's too many areas where you can abuse a mech player by just completely avoiding his army.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how exactly they are going to go into the mid-game now. So far, we don't have any aggression whatsoever. Both players just sitting tight here and trying to build up their economy. So we will decide this game in the mid-game. The expansions are nearing completion, and we have now the extra gas added for YoDa.
Oh, there's the barracks being moved, and he's going to go ahead and start his Hellion production. And
here we go.
Yep, Hellbats.
Hellbats for Fantasy.
Fantasy, like many Kessel players, known for Hellbat drops in this matchup.
Yeah, you know, people are always joking that TVT is all about who makes more Hellbats. If that's actually true, then Fantasy is going to win this game right here and there because YoDa is not even bothering throwing down an armory.
Yeah, he's making double Widow Mines instead, in fact.
Yeah, and with the Widow Mines, and I mean, what I would expect YoDa to do here is get one Viking with his starport right away. With the Widow Mines, you can get a good shot against the Medivacs, and then the Vikings finishes them off. A Widow Mine does not one-hit a Medivac, so you need another unit to do a little bit of damage.
Yeah,
and
Marines or a Viking.
Yeah, but the Viking is of course the much better choice here because it can zone out your opponent's Medivacs much better. Yep. It's much more mobile, especially in the early game when there's no stim available for the player. So I would expect to see at least one Viking once that YoDa realizes what exactly Fantasy is up to.
YoDa making a dropship first. Looks like he wants to do Widow Mine drop. He's also starting a siege tank back at home. And the Widow Mine drop for Fantasy is a little bit delayed. It's going to be the later one, of course, and with the double starport.
Yeah. And we have actually a very heavy supply block here for Fantasy. He's building double supply depots now. We have the Hellbats being built, and there's the Viking that I talked about earlier. So YoDa is going into the Viking. He sees what's coming here, and he is going to prepare for it accordingly.
And that's that drop is spotted, but that's what I was talking about with that delay, man. Fantasy is actually going to lose so much time here trying to make those medevacs. He lost a ton of time on the starport.
But he's going for this double drop then afterwards, so that's going to do some damage. And here comes YoDa in with the medivac, not only trying to do some damage, but also able to scout a little bit what's going on. But here's the first Widowmine shot, but we don't have a Viking, and this is exactly the situation that we talked about earlier. Widowmine getting a few hits here off, both of them.
Yep, has to use a scan, and his Hellbats are revealed.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit annoying.
That drop didn't do too much damage in the end, though.
Not a whole lot.
Yeah.
Losing the medevac is harsh, too.
Could have done a lot more, but you can see that YoDa is now prepared for the Hellbat drop. He's already in a position with the siege tanks. He doesn't siege them up. You want to have them in the normal mode. Well, sieges up one of them.
One of them, I guess, is okay. Just got to be careful about that.
For the range, I guess. I find it a little bit odd, though. You're always very likely to damage your own SCVs, and when the Widowmines, the Hellbats are dropped on top of the SCVs, they will already be damaged. But the Vikings are already in position.
This is the scary part, though. He didn't prepare anything for his natural. Luckily, no booster there on that medevac, or he would have lost a lot of SCVs. And now that Viking is going to just go to work. He needs to lift up and get away. He might not even be able to escape. He has to use the Hellbats to fight.
Yeah. And the Hellbats, they attack what they can, but in the main base we have once again a drop, and he doesn't even drop them.
Yeah, that was really poor control.
Yeah, so Fantasy doesn't do any damage here.
This puts YoDa at a huge lead. I mean, he just crushed those drops. I mean, that was excellent for him. He already has a third command center. He's got siege tanks out. He has the Viking count that can allow him to be aggressive right now. And he's facing a mech composition, but this is what we saw yesterday almost identically. Somebody who goes for a tank marine build, they hold off the Hellbat drops, and then they have a timing because their opponent's going for mech, and they're very, very weak during this moment.
The drop that is moving out, on the other hand, could do a ton of damage. It's not the natural right now, and he's dropping 4 Hellbats, and those SCVs are toast. They don't stand a chance here. But YoDa still pushing out with his force. He has the siege tanks there. He's taking down the first Widowmine already. He sees the second one. The tanks are getting in position, taking down those Hellbats.
And it looks like the Hellbats here are going to do a little bit more damage. That one tank, not quite enough. Fantasy needs to hold this push off somehow, though. You know, the drop is great, but it's not going to matter if he dies.
This is a little bit of an elimination race that we currently have. Who's going to die first? YoDa is losing a lot of his economy, but the same is true for Fantasy, who's struggling, but he's moving in with those Hellbats, and Hellbats are definitely a bit too strong for this. It looks like YoDa is going to be cleaned up here after all.
Yeah, a little bit sloppy on the attack by YoDa, and nothing at home for the defense.
Hellbats to win the game once again. The job unscouted by YoDa. He doesn't see the second set of medivacs moving into his natural and loses most of his harvesters. The Hellbats doing a ton of damage here, and even YoDa's push could not equalize it.
Yeah, you know, what we saw yesterday from Maru was leaving one bunker in both mineral lines to stop this. And I don't know what YoDa thinks he's going to get done here, but he's looking really desperate at this point in time. He's lost almost all of his harvesters right now, 35 to unlucky number 13.
We saw an excellent defense against the first 2 medivacs, but the second set, he didn't see it and he didn't expect it. Yeah. He was moving out and he's thought in his brain, okay, I am going to be the one who is now attacking. You will have to defend. And Fantasy had the drops already at the bottom left, and he just didn't have anything at home, YoDa that is, to defend.
GG.
GG. Hellbats for the win.
Gotta put bunkers up. You know, we saw that yesterday. Maru had bunkers at both mineral lines, and that was just all he needed. You sacrifice a few units putting him in those bunkers. You don't have all those units for the attack, but if you don't lose your entire economy to 2 dropships, I think it's worth it.
Yeah. Fantasy now 1-0 in the group, as well as Trust. Golden versus Savage is going to be our next game. The last game for our first set of 3 matches that we have here at the Up and Down group. But the last game was a little bit unfortunate for YoDa. At first, good scouting, did a decent job here. His drop didn't do too much.
It just scouted, basically, you know, that's all he was really able to accomplish.
But then a really good defense against the Hellbats. So it was able to take down not only the first set at the natural, but then also with the double Viking in the main base, took down the medivac before Fantasy could even drop those Hellbats. The problem for him really being that when he pushed out, he didn't expect those 2 additional dropships to move in. He had nothing at home to defend, lost everything, and could also not sustain his attack because those Hellbats were just moving in a little bit too close, taking down the Marines. Widowmines, of course, also playing a huge role here for Fantasy's defense. And overall, great job by Fantasy, and YoDa just should have built a few more Hellbats, I guess.
Yeah, or, you know, had a better defense set up for them for the second wave. I mean, you see Hellbat drops come in, the logical expectation is they're going to come back. He's not just going to stop doing it because they are so damaging. If you get them off, I mean, they are going to do an insane amount of damage, and their Hellbats are very strong against stacked up groups of workers. I mean, that's just how they're designed to be. So if you don't prepare, you're going to lose your SVs. You just, and I guess he was thinking, I'm going to be the one who's knocking on the door. I'm going out there first, but it did not happen that way.
He did not see that there were 2 additional medivacs moving out. He expected the first 2, but then number 3 and number 4, that was something where it was like, okay, well, those guys certainly appeared out of nowhere. Didn't have his defenses set up, so now YoDa down 1 game in the group. And that's also true for Golden, who we are going to see playing the next match, and he is up against Savage, so we will have a Zerg versus Zerg once again. Savage was able to win one of those mini tournaments that we had to determine the 2 seeds that we have for the up and downs here. So that was also quite an accomplishment for him. Now he's playing in this group, and Savage is the one player that I'm curious about the most. To be honest with
because I mean, getting in here off of that tournament seed, it says seed, which a lot of people incorrectly assume means that he just got in for free. He actually had to work for that, and he took out several good players along the way. That just goes to show that he's somebody that, yeah, he may not be on the profile of these Terrans. He's still somebody that you got to look out for. And going to the Zerg versus Zerg, I'm looking forward to seeing at least what his style is like. Is he the type to be aggressive with Banelings, or is he going to try to tech more quickly? How does he take his third base in the ZVZ? Is he reluctant to build Spore Crawlers, for example?
It's also the last mirror match that we are going to have today. We already had our Terran versus Terran. After the Zerg versus Zerg, the only matchups that we have left will be non-mirror matchups. And for Golden, this is, of course, now very important. He kind of has to win it. If you lose the match now, then you are already in a position where you have to hope for some kind of a 3-way tie, for a tie situation in the group. Losing 2 games in a 5-player group is never a good position to be in. So Golden really hoping that he can make a difference here and at least get his first win out there. So already a lot of pressure on the StarTale player. And in game number 1, he had a few questionable decisions. Overall, he looked strong, but still, he needs to... I feel that he's a little bit nervous. We saw him in the GSTL, and every single time he came into the booth, he looked a bit nervous here, playing at the GSL in the new studio in Gangnam. It's fairly new. I mean, we are here a lot, so for us, it's already like our new home. But for the players, not all of them are here on a weekly basis. So a lot of them will play here in maybe like 1 game, then 2 months later they play their second game. So it's very different from them than it is for us or for you guys at home. They don't see that studio all that often, and they don't play in those booths on a regular basis. So there are a lot of nerve issues that are still floating around.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I mean, this is going to be a really big proving ground for him right now. If he loses this game, like we said earlier in a 5-player group, if you go 0-2, then you have to hope for certain circumstances to occur so that you can get in, tie with the right people.
Savage here with his undefeated shirt, playing for Casper's 8th team.
Yep. Undefeated clothing sponsor for Casper's 8th team. Really cool clothes. I like them.
Red City is the map.
Red City.
Sick.
Sick map.
I can't wait.
A very sick, organized group of buildings.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And we saw so many sick games on this map already in the past.
Certainly so. I hope that we get to repeat this once more going in.
Maybe we're going to have a sick match now between Golden and Savage going into this game 3 here at the GSL Up and Down Group B. Golden versus Savage, brought to you by Carl and Wolf.